You think your pregnancy is going to go the way you planned? Let us tell you our story. April 25th of 2022, Gary and I found out that we were expecting a baby. We were extremely excited. We have been waiting for a baby. We've been trying for 3 years. Um, we were at the point of our lives that we were going to have to try in vitro. We didn't know what was going on. We thought that maybe there was some infertility going on, and out of God's grace, we found out, like I said, on April 25th that we were expecting a baby, and it was the most exciting time of our life. We have been waiting for this moment forever, and it was God's blessing. June 26th, we had a gender reveal, and my husband's friend and my brother, they went and they got to find out what we were having, and we had a gender reveal that Sunday. And it was such a magical moment having all of our friends and family gather with us to find out what we were having, and come to find out that we were having a little boy. And I was a mom. I was like, oh, I can't wait. I think it's a girl. I want a girl. And my husband was like, I want a boy. And we found out we were having a boy, and it was the most exciting moment of our lives. We were so excited that, it's just that we've been blessed with a baby, and everything had looked good, and it was just amazing. July 7th, I woke up in the morning and I wasn't feeling well. Mind you, my whole first trimester was absolutely miserable. I'd vomited every single morning. I had headaches. I had dizzy spells. I didn't want to eat. I was not feeling well at all. I was going in for weekly fluids to make sure that I was staying hydrated. And when I woke up on July 7th, I just wasn't feeling me. And I waited a day and just to see that, like, maybe I would start feeling better and things could get better. And it didn't. And I told my husband that evening, I said, I'm just not feeling right. And my husband at the time, he was a detention officer. He worked nights. And I was like, I think I'm going to go to the hospital. And so I ended up going to Marcus Daily or Bitter Health, and I was checked in and seen, and they asked if you've been around anybody with COVID or the flu or this or that, and I said no, I've been healthy and just dealing with this pregnancy. And they said we're going to do a COVID test, and I said okay, and they did a COVID test, and it came back positive. And in that moment, it was scary. COVID was still I mean, it still is a big thing, but it was, a big thing then. And there's all these different kinds. And the doctor's like, we have to get, your OB on board and all of these things. And it was scary. It was really, really, like wondering what was going to go on. Um, so I went into my appointment to my gynecologist in Hamilton, and she let me know when you have COVID, you become a high risk patient. Reason being, your baby can be large. Your plus, so many placenta issues and blood clot issues and all these different things. So she let me know that I had to be referred to a high risk specialist, and down in Hamilton, they don't have a high risk specialist. So I was referred to maternal fetal medicine, which is at a community hospital in Missoula. And I saw the team of Dr. Holbrook and Dr. Mitchell, a wonderful team. My first appointment with them was on September 13th. And I had gone in, and they said, we have to do, we have to check you out. We have to do all these different ultrasounds on your baby and see how your placenta is and see how the fluids are and make sure that there's nothing going wrong with him. And at that moment, it was scary, like, oh my gosh, we've already had all these trying times in the past. Let's pray that everything's going to be okay. And so everything checked out good, that appointment, and they were happy with it. At that point on, my husband and I, Gary, we decided that we wanted to find a doctor out of community hospital, an OBGYN. And we had asked maternal fetal medicine if there was, somebody that they referred. And they gave us a few names. And after looking, one of the nurses, Eileen, she let us know that Paul Baumgartner was a very good choice. And so we ended up going with Dr. Baumgartner, Paul Baumgartner, and it went wonderfully. We loved him. Our first appointment we had with him was on October 4th, and things were going very well with him. that first appointment, he was just super understanding. He cared about my husband and I both. He didn't care if he was in the room for an hour and a half if he was answering all of your questions. It was amazing. And on that day, he let me know that I needed to do a glucose test to see if I was a gestational diabetic. And um, I told him okay, and we ended up going back on October 7th, and I did a 1 hour glucose blood test, and they let me know that I failed that 1 hour test. I it was just failed. So when you fail that 1 hour test, they have you go in for a 3 hour test. So I had to go back into the hospital. That's not something you do in the OB's office. You go into the hospital and they give you the same thick, sugary drink. Just disgusting. And I had to before the drink they took my blood, and then after, and then every hour for 3 hours they take your blood, and they let me know the next day. They said they called me and they notified me that I had failed my 3 hour test. And as a first time mom, it's like, okay, now I've had COVID, so I have the risk of blood clots, and I'm now on another medication for blood clots, and now I have gestational diabetes, and just so many questions running through my head, and like it was just a blur. It was scary, and just so many different things. So on October 11th, my husband and I, we went in to see Dr. Holbrook, which is at the maternal fetal medicine, and they said, here we stand. You're a gestational diabetic. We now have to figure out another. We have to put you on insulin, and you know, that's not what I was expecting. And I thought there was something else that they could do, and they let me know that there's metformin, but it doesn't always work, and where my numbers were, that they were thinking insulin would have been the best choice with some food control. So I was put on insulin that day, and I was given a glucometer, so I had to check my blood sugars. Every time I ate, I had to check 2 hours after. My breakfast, my lunch, my dinner. Gary and I, we, as a team that we are, and let me tell you, if you have gestational, make sure that your partner is on board with you. Make sure your partner is willing to change their eating habits with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard. We had to change everything, different proteins, different carbs, watch the calories, watch everything in different ways. And, if your husband or, is sitting there eating a Big Mac and you're sitting there eating, salami with some crackers and cheese, you're like, you might want that Big Mac. And, just make sure that your partner's on board and willing to take on this challenge with you, because, you're in this together. You're a team. You need to, you know, treat it as you're both in this together. And so things went really well from there. We were doing great. My got on the insulin and things started going good, and I was going to be seen 2 weeks later. On October 17th, I was experiencing some weird cramping, some back pain, some sharp pain, some like upper abdominal pain, just really weird things that I had never felt. And I told my husband about that, and I was like, I think I need to go to the hospital. Like, ended up taking me to community, and I went to the labor and delivery. They took me into triage. They put two monitors on you. One monitor is to watch your baby's heartbeat. The other one is to watch your contractions, see how you're doing, things like that. And they said, you're having contractions, and you're not, you still have like 12 to 14 weeks left. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really scary. They said, we have to do all these tests to make sure that your water didn't break, and that there's no, amniotic fluid, and just so many things. And it was just so scary. And they said, we got to check your cervix. And when the residency doctor had come in and checked my cervix, they go, we think you're a centimeter and a half dilated, which is not super good for as far as, where you're at in your pregnancy. And so they had another doctor come in, and they checked my cervix, and same situation. They were like, yeah, she's a centimeter and a half dilated. And it was just crazy hearing that, because I was not very far along. So Um, so I was released and I ended up going back on November 3rd. And it was the same situation. Having some contractions, having the weird pains. I was like, I better just go back in to make sure I'm not, dilated further. And so we went back in and still was at a centimeter and a half, just having contractions. And so they said, we want you to be seen by your high risk doctor every week. And so I already had, gestational diabetes and I had COVID. So I was seeing them bi-weekly and now it became weekly and, driving to Missoula once a week. And it was a lot. But it's going to be worth it in the end. So on December 2nd, my husband and I went in and we saw Dr. Baumgartner, and he had looked at my charts from over at maternal fetal medicine, and in the charts it showed that we were having a large baby. Our baby looked like he was, 7 or 8 pounds. The way he was measuring, his bones were really, large, so he was looking like a larger baby. And he said, even though it's your first kid, we need to set, an induction date. And so we had had been talking and was going to set an induction date. And we ended up doing our induction date on December 26th. And that was a Monday. And it was really, really, scary hearing, now you're going to be induced and all these things and you're going to have this big baby. And, there's risks and, all of these things. So, and when you have gestational diabetes, they explain to you in the maternal fetal medicine, they let you know that with that, there is risks of stillborn baby. If you don't know what a stillborn baby is, that's when your baby comes out not breathing, not living. And I just broke down in tears. It was so hard for my husband and I to hear that. It was terrifying. The other one is you might not be able to have a natural birth like you planned, and that I've been with my husband for 7.5 years, and we said, he's always known, like, that is one of my biggest dreams in life is to have a natural birth. No epidural, no nothing. And the fact that I now had gestational and that was putting that at risk, it was really hard. So Dr. Baumgartner said, we do have to do an induction date. So we picked December 26th, which was 3 weeks before my due date. So my son would have been at 37 gestational weeks. And my original due date was January 16th of 2023. So, we pray that, our induction date goes great and that we don't have this ginormous baby because I wanted natural birth and I didn't want anything to interfere with that. So my husband and I, we tell our family, we're going to be induced on December 26th. My brother is in college in El Paso, Texas, and he came home and we did Christmas early and, got everything prepared for bringing our special little boy into our life, which we were just ecstatic about. So on December 25th, my husband's parents got us a motel room in Missoula uh, that Sunday night. So we were only 3 minutes away from the hospital. We could get to the hospital, at 7 in the morning for check-in. And when you're doing those things, checking in like at 7 in the morning in Missoula, it's 45 minutes. And we're having a baby in the middle of winter. The roads could be, bad. And, it was actually freezing rain that morning. So we were super thankful that we were right there. And we go in on December 26th and we walk in those doors a proud mom and dad already. We looked at each other and we're like, today is the day that I get to see you become a dad. And today is the day you got to see me become a mom. And we became a family of 3. And, in your mind, you're like, I can't wait. And like tomorrow or the next day, we're going to walk out with this little bundle of joy in our arms. We get to go home. We get to change dirty diapers. We have to wake up in the middle of the night. We have all these obligations now, and it's going to happen in a matter of time. We are going to have this baby in our arms. Like, it's such a blessing. We couldn't wait. So I get in at 7 in the morning at community hospital, and they let me know, we'll be in with you in a bit. So about an hour, we waited, and the nurse came in, and her name was Callie. She was a phenomenal nurse. Absolutely loved her. And she let me know that, we're going to give you Cytotec, which is a pill that they give you to start softening your cervix. And they gave me that. They waited until about 11 o'clock, and Dr. Bumgardner came in. They decided that they were going to start Pitocin because I was feeling contractions, but not much. And I was like 2 centimeters dilated at 11 o'clock. And so they gave me Pitocin, started bumping the Pitocin throughout the day. Things were going great. I was feeling good. About 3 o'clock, I started noticing that I was having contractions. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling some contractions. These ones are getting pretty good. Nothing that I couldn't handle. My husband and my nurse Eileen, they walked me up and down the halls, and my husband would rub my head and just like try to calm me, give me washcloths if I needed them because I was hot and then cold. And we decided that we were gonna order. For some reason that day, I was craving French dips, and decided that we were gonna have French dips. So we had that for lunch and went for another walk, and it was just a beautiful moment, like walking up and down those halls, knowing that I was gonna have a baby shortly. And so Dr. Bumgardner came in about 4 o'clock, and I told him, I'm starting to really feel these contractions, but I'm, still doing okay. Around 6 o'clock that evening, I decided that I was going to take a bath, and I got in a jacuzzi tub. I had jets. I was feeling good. I was in there for about 20 minutes, and got kind of nauseous because I got really hot. So moms, don't do your bath too hot because you will feel kind of icky. And so I got out of the bath, and the contractions were starting to hit pretty rapidly. And I had a consistent flow of the contractions. They were sticking pretty well to me. And that hero that I was going to be, I decided that I wasn't going to be that hero anymore. I needed an epidural. And so I got my epidural around 7 o'clock on the 26th. When you have that epidural, you can't eat solid foods after that. You can have, I think I could have like a little bit of applesauce, which I did, like apple and orange juice, water, ice chips, things like that. So we did my epidural. Moms, let me tell you, my husband came back to me. I was terrified of the epidural. I was crying. It was a lot of emotions, wasn't it? It was
Oh yeah.
it was scary. I didn't want an epidural. I was like, I'm gonna be this hero. I'm gonna have this natural birth. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm doing it all on my own. And I did that epidural, and it was amazing. Moms, if you want to go natural, I 100% respect and know that you can do it. I'm sure I could have. I know you can. But that epidural was amazing. It helped everything. And so I got my epidural. We went to bed about 9 o'clock that night, and Dr. Bumgardner was expecting that we were going to be having a baby sometime the middle of that night. So, time would go around. Nurses would come in. The residency doctor would come in. They would do cervix checks to see where I was at. Um, about 7 o'clock that morning of the 27th, December 27th. So we went all night without a baby. About 7 o'clock that morning, I was like, wondering where I was at. And the doctor comes in, and they're like, Dr. Paul Baumgartner, he comes in and he goes, "You're at your max level of Pitocin. We can't do anymore. We're just going to let you labor for a while longer. You're only at 4.5 centimeters." And I'm like, okay. He came back. I had another nurse come in about 9, and I'd moved to 5.5 centimeters. So I'm like, okay, this is the deal. My cervix are going. I'm moving along. And um, it was like, this is going to be go time soon. This is exciting. And Dr. Baumgartner had come in after that about 12. Mind you, I haven't eaten. Like, I'm kind of getting hungry. Dr. Baumgartner had come in about 12:30 on the 27th in the middle of the day, and he's like, "You're still at 5.5 centimeters. You're not improving. You're not getting any further. You're kind of stuck." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I'm at my max Pitocin. Cytotec didn't do anything from here on out." So he looks at us, and um, he talks to my husband and I, and he goes, are you ready for a C-section? I'm laboring for 27 hours at this point." And I looked at my husband, and we just decided, yeah, you know what, let's just do it. So I went in for a C-section about 12:50, 12:45, 12:50. They handed my husband these paper scrubs, and they said, we're going to prep your wife for a C-section. And so they asked him to stand outside of the operating room, and I'm gonna let him tell you how he felt standing outside that operating room, knowing his wife was in there.
Yeah, it's the most anxious feeling you'll ever feel. I mean, the minutes felt like hours just knowing that you're about to become a dad, and that is just, you know, it's been 27 hours up until this point, very slow. Things take forever waiting anxiously, but then in the matter of 15 minutes, it's like, all right, well, here we go. Now we're going to have a C section. And when you're waiting out in that hallway or however it is in other hospitals, it's just so anxious feeling, just knowing that you're gonna become a dad and you're not with your wife or and
Knowing what's going on in that
yeah,
room,
just not knowing.
what are they doing to, it was questions like, we had talked about after, what were they doing to you in there? What's going on in there? And it was crazy. So they take me to the operating room, and I remember being wheeled in on this bed that I was on, and I couldn't feel from my belly button down. They said, we're gonna move you on to a metal flat table, and having like 8 people around me moving me was absolutely terrifying. So they got me moved over, and I was laying on the bed, and I just was freezing. I remember the anesthesiologist, like 6'4", standing above me. I remember the doctors down below. Is the residency doctor in here? Do we have all the nurses in here? Is the warming pad on for the baby? Do we have oxygen if needed? Um, all of these things I was hearing. Do we have the right scalpels? Make sure that we have the umbilical cord clips for when Dad comes over to trim the cord, and just all of these things. And they let me know that they were going to welcome my husband into the room. And I remember my husband coming in and grabbing my hand immediately. And he can tell you I was shaking. I was
Yeah,
freezing,
it's cold in there.
so cold. And they brought me warm blankets, and I was, like I said, I was just freezing. I felt like I was in a blur. They told me that I was going to feel like tugging and pulling and some pressure and all of these things, but I shouldn't feel pain. And so they said, we're going to start the incision. I remember them, starting the incision, and um, I felt the tugging and the pulling, and it was scary. I just didn't know what to expect, even though they told me, as a first time mom, you never know. And so I remember them, saying, we see the head, we see hair. And they had kind of pushed up into my ribs because he had been in the birth canal, and they pulled him out. And I remember them holding him up and showing me. And that moment on was amazing. It was the most heartwarming, best feeling I have ever had in my life. Ever. I mean, it was such a special moment. I started crying. My husband started crying. We looked at each other, and we said, baby, we did it. We did it. Our baby's here. And I got to see my son for like 10 seconds. They called my husband over to clip his cord. And then all of a sudden, I hear, we need NICU team stat. And I'm like, I went numb. I felt like they had dropped a 1,000,000-pound boulder on my chest. I felt like my heart was just racing. I couldn't breathe. I was terrified. My husband's over with my son. After the fact, my husband said, they were putting all these like face things on him to get him to breathe, and like kind of shaking him and all of these things. And all of a sudden, I see this cart roll in, and I see like 6 or 8 nurses from the NICU come in, and they take my baby, and then there goes my husband. I'm laying there in a blur. I'm asking myself, I heard my son whine a little bit, but is my son alive? Is my son okay? Was he too big? All of these questions, because I'm expecting a big baby because I'm a gestational diabetic, and I'm freaking out. I'm crying. I'm asking my doctor and my nurses, like, what's wrong with my baby? And well, he's having breathing problems. Like, I want to know more. What is wrong with my baby? And obviously, he had to do tests and things. So I did, and nobody knew at that point. So they get me sewed up, and I go back to my labor room. I'm in there for about 20 to 30 minutes, and they bring a wheelchair, and they take me over to my mother and baby room over in that wing of the hospital. Mind you, I've been out of surgery for now almost an hour. Some of my family was there, my mom and my husband's parents, and they were trying to, comfort me. And I'm like, I haven't seen my husband, I haven't seen my baby except for 10 seconds through this, plastic that's through you. Where are they? What is going on? About 30 minutes later, my doctor comes in and he goes, your baby was taken to NICU. And I'm like, I know. And I was like, what does he weigh? How long is he? Is he safe? Is he okay? Like, what's going on? I'm still in this blur. I feel like I'm in shock. Like somebody threw me in freezing cold water. My body is numb in shock. And he goes, yes, your baby's okay, but he is 4 pounds, 14 ounces. And I'm like, do you have the right baby? And he goes, yes, your son was 4 pounds, 14 ounces, and 16.9 inches long. And I'm like, why did we think it was a big baby? Well, all the tests they had ran, they were going off bone size, and he measured a lot bigger. And knowing that I had this small baby, I'm like, what is wrong? So they offered me to go over to the NICU, and I went over to the NICU and I walked in and I bawled immediately. I was still numb. I was crying so hard I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was hugging my husband, asking him, what did I do wrong? I wanted to fail tell myself I failed and that this was all my fault and I could have done better and what did I eat that was wrong and or what did I do in my pregnancy that was wrong? And it was totally I just wanted to blame myself and it was very hard. And they let me know that our son had a heart murmur and it was very small, but they were guessing he had a heart murmur. He needed lung development. His lungs weren't quite strong enough. He was at like 85 O2 for his O2. He was having, with the heart murmur, he was having some drops in his heart rate. So he was
Mm-hmm.
having heart arrhythmia. His heart rate would drop to like 80, maybe even lower at times, and then it would spike back up to where it should be and then drop. And what was great is his blood pressure was always really good, which was very important. So on this time I had to take a deep breath and I had to realize my son's in the NICU. This is going to be a journey. They don't prepare you for it. This is scary. So many thoughts. And so our son, he was in the NICU, and the next day, we go to our room. We're staying the night there. I'm like all over the place, not sleeping well. My husband's, on this pull-out couch. Um, we did bring, moms and dads, bring your own blankets, bring your own pillows, bring your own snacks, bring what you want to drink. Um, bring anything that you have at home that makes you comfortable in the hospital. So at least we had everything in our room besides our son, and that was hard. The next day on day two, we go in and our son's on a breathing machine and he has a tube down his throat and IVs and being tested and being poked in the bottom of the foot to check, different testing and all of these things. And it was very, very scary. It was so hard to watch. And so we spend the day as a family that day. My family and my husband's family come up and see us, and we just know that we're blessed to have everybody around us. We go in and we pray with our son continuously, and we pray that God has a plan and that everything will be okay. And so the night comes around, which the days felt like weeks. It was just crazy because we just wanted our son. And day three, we go back and we see him, and he still has his breathing machine, and they're doing what's called gavage feeding. So it's a machine that pumps food into his tube down his throat and gets it into his tummy. So he was being fed that way. There was no breastfeeding. There was no bottle feeding at that point. And we just spent time with him and knew that Gary and I loved each other endlessly and that we loved our little boy endlessly. And we just wanted to hold his hand and snuggle him. And, not holding your baby's hard. Day four comes around and they
I just
decide
want
that
him to
our little
want.
guy's been doing really good on breathing. They had slowed down the machine that puts air into his lungs. And they said, he's doing really good overnight. We're going to take his breathing machine out. We're going to take his CPAP off, and, he will need no assistance breathing. And our little guy ended up coming off of that on day 4, which was, that's one step. In the NICU, there's so many steps. And to us, that was a huge milestone. That was
Mm-hmm.
like going from running a mile to going and running 100 miles that we had reached. And it was crazy. And so day 5 comes around. The day 4, that night was my last night in the hospital. Day 5 comes around, I'm being released from the hospital. um, and that was hard. Why that was hard was I cried and I cried, and I knew that I wasn't going to be in the hospital with my baby. I wasn't going to be in the same building as my son. It was hard. We were welcomed into the Ronald McDonald House, and that is a facility for parents that qualify that live over a certain amount of miles away, which we did. And we stayed there so we could be close to our little guy, just a parking lot away from where he was. And so we stayed there, and we got up at 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning. We were there by 7. We were there to be with our baby and listen to what the doctors had to say when they came in. And um, on that day 5, it was hard. Like I said, having to leave my son, and I felt like I was leaving him for an eternity, and it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
We got settled into our Ronald McDonald House. We had stayed the night there. Day 6 came around, and they said, we're going to start your baby either on the breast or bottle feeding. And I said, I want to just get the bottle established. At this point, I'm pumping multiple milliliters for him. He's drinking my milk 100% just through a bottle. So they had removed his tube out of his throat and placed it into his nose. So they still had an alternative way of feeding him if he did not finish his whole bottles, which he was not finishing his whole bottles. So they got him all set up with the nose tube, and we started eating that day. And you don't realize what 5 milliliters feels like when you're supposed to eat 25 or 30 or 35, but if you can get 5 milliliters down with the bottle, it's huge because your baby is learning to eat from a nipple of a bottle, and that's ginormous. And he had such a little mouth. He was on an ultra preemie nipple, so it wasn't just a regular size, and that was a huge milestone. Um, we had stayed there 2 nights at Ronald McDonald House. That next night, on night 6, we had stayed, and the day of the 6th, we had talked about maybe going home. We just needed our animals and our family and our dogs and everything like that. And so we had stayed there on night 6, and day 7 came around, and we went over and saw our little guy and got to love on him and, try to feed him his bottle and all of these different things. And we decided for us that it was the best decision that we go home and we be with our family and we be with our dogs and eat our own food and things like that. And we had a dear friend that had lived this exact moments that we were living, almost a year to the date, um, that told us, like, you guys, it's okay, your son will be okay, he's going to do a 360-degree flip and he's going to be able to eat. And it was just so nice having somebody that supported us and could explain to us that it was going to be okay. She's such a strong mom, and she had faith in us knowing that it was going to be okay. And she comforted me and told me that, I'm here for you. And it meant a lot to us. So we went home, and uh, day 7 came around, and like I said, we had spent time with him, and um, went home that night, and day 8 was here. And our son started eating from a bottle very, very well. He was drinking, like a whole bottle now a day. And then in that night, he had 2 bottles all by himself. And the next day we got there, and it was day 9 in NICU, and we got to feed him, and he finished all 3 bottles. And they said, it's time to take out his nose tube. We feel like he's eating appropriately on day 9. And they said, you're probably going to go home tomorrow. And let me tell you, those words were like hearing the words of you just won the lottery.
Hmm.
You just ran a marathon. You know, you have all of these things that are stuck in your heart. I've cried for days at this point. I'm so emotional. I'm bawling in bed. I'm bawling in my husband's arms. I'm so, so stressed and exhausted. I'm vomiting. I hadn't eaten. I was losing a pound a day, if not more. I wasn't eating. I was drinking some water. I was a disaster. And so, hearing, your son might go home tomorrow was amazing. They will never give you a for sure date. They will never give you a time, but they say, he's doing
Oh, they
well.
will. They'll give you the date that he's originally due.
Yeah, so like January 16th, they said, yeah, he'll have to go to his gestational date. And at this time, it was January 6th. And we were praying that he was going to go home. January 7th came around, and we got to the hospital, and they said he's going to go home today. And that was the most amazing feeling ever. The 10 days that we were in there, the hours felt like days, and the days felt like weeks, and the week, just 1 week and 3 days felt like a month. It was so hard. And so that day was especially special to my husband and I because my brother Carson was going back to El Paso where he's attending college, and he had to be out of or at the airport at 1:45 or 1 o'clock that day. And we talked to our LPN that was working with us and our doctor, and we said, we really want our son to meet my brother. My brother is my rock. My brother is my best friend. My brother and my husband are extremely close. We are a very tight bonded family. We're it's just amazing the bond that we have together. And we have a window outside our NICU room, but none of our family could come in and see our son. Our moms, our dads, his grandparents, my brother, nobody could come in and see him. And so, they said, yeah, we can work something out, but it's going to be, really tight. And so our son is let out of the NICU about 11:30 on January 7th. We were released, and we got to go out to the waiting room, and my brother got to spend about 15 of the most magical, amazing, heartwarming minutes with his nephew. He was the first person besides my husband and I and our family to hold our son. We got to watch him become an uncle. We got to watch his eyes look down at him and totally fall in love. It was the most amazing moment ever. It was tears in my eyes. I started crying, knowing that my son was held by his uncle and that we were in this together. My brother bought our son Riker a duck call with his initials and birth date engraved on it because Riker is going to be Carson's duck hunting partner in a few short years, and it was just amazing. So Carson ended up getting to spend time with Riker before he left, and he ended up leaving, and we went home, and we got to surprise my in-laws and my mom with our son because they had no idea he was coming home. And it was so amazing to watch my father-in-law, especially. Um, he fell in love all over again. I've never seen my father-in-law so just tears in his eyes, and it was the most amazing magical moment ever. I literally watched him fall in love all over again. And his wife Brenda, my mother-in-law, she was in awe, and my mom, she was just beyond herself. She couldn't even believe that she had a grandson. It was beautiful. So we got home on January 7th. We got out of the NICU, and it was beautiful. So the reason that Gary and I are bringing this to your guys' attention, and the reason that we wanted to tell you our story and the way we planned and the way it went was totally different. We wanted to come to you and let you know that doctors, they don't prepare you to be a NICU parent. when you find out you're pregnant and you go through the 36, 38, 40 weeks with your child, 9 months of growing them, they don't prepare you to be a NICU mom. They don't prepare you to be a NICU dad. They prepare you as if your child's going to come home with you after you have him or her. And it was really hard being a NICU parent. I want all of you moms and dads to know it's okay to cry. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay if you need to skip a day and just not go in there, which we never did, but you can. Know that nobody's going to look down on you moms if you can't breastfeed right away. I just started breastfeeding about a month or a week and a half ago, and my son's going to be a month old on Tuesday. Just know that you're probably going to have baby blues. And if you're feeling down or depressed or hopeless, go to your resources, go to your doctor, go to your nurses, go to your spouse, talk it out, let them know that you're having problems. There's help out there for you. Don't be scared that your child's going to get taken away because you're scared. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen. Those nurses and doctors and your spouse are there for you. They are your support. My husband's my rock. I couldn't have done it without him. Like I couldn't have done this alone. It was scary. It was terrifying. And I had him to keep me positive and keep me going. And I cried in nurses' arms. I cried in my doctor's arms. I cried in a mom's arms that I've never met in my life that was walking down the hallway. I mean, I was a mess, and I am so blessed for everybody that was there for me. And when you're in the NICU, it's very expensive. Our son was in there for 10 days, and it's roughly $23,000 a day. That's just a rough estimate, and it's very hard. Financially, it is a burden. We live 40 to 45 minutes away from Missoula. So, when you're getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning to leave for Missoula, you don't always have time to stop and get breakfast because you have to be at the hospital to be there to get the update on your son from the doctors. You have to be there for all these different things. So you don't have time to get breakfast at home. You're spending money on breakfast. You're spending money on lunches because you don't live nearby. You can't just go get lunches. You can bring snacks and everything. So, it's very expensive. Our son was in there 10 days. I, was laboring before that. My husband ended up taking 3 weeks off of work, and um, we're super thankful that we were helped out by family and that our family supported us, and we were super blessed to be able to be there with our son every single day and every time that we needed to be there. We were financially safe, but just know that it is a burden, and they don't prepare you for those things. They don't prepare you, like I said, to be a NICU mom. They don't prepare you to put you in a Ronald McDonald house, which is completely strange to you. It's very, very scary. And we just wanted to share our story about what we went through and how it changed our outlook on things. Um, you know, our son had to pass a 90-minute car seat test before we got to leave the hospital. And luckily, we had a really good car seat. We ended up going with Up a Baby that was for babies under, up to 4 pounds. And our son was just barely over 4 pounds. And, once we left, he was 5 pounds, 2 ounces. But, if we didn't have that car seat, we might not have been able to take our child home. So, kudos to Up a Baby for focusing on those things. And we will drop the link of the car seat and stroller that we have through Up a Baby because it's amazing. Do you have anything you want to share? Um,
Not really. Just take every moment by moment. I mean,
yeah,
you can never, you think you can have a perfect plan, but really you can't.
it's
It's
not always
just,
perfect.
and nothing can really prepare you for being a NICU parent, but just getting a little information, because I never thought I'd be a NICU parent. I never thought he'd be in the NICU, and
No, we never expected that.
there we were, 10 days, which isn't a long time in the NICU by any means. There's some babies that spend months in the NICU, but luckily he wasn't sick. He was just learning how to breathe and eat and had that little heart murmur deal. And that was basically it. That's, and the last part of that takes the longest, which is learning to eat. And so that's very frustrating. You feel like you're force feeding him when, you can't just be force feeding him. If he doesn't take the bottle, then they just garbage feed him. And it's just a slow process.
It is. So, if you have any questions, moms, reach out. If you have any questions, dads, reach out. Leave us a comment below. Subscribe to our page, like our page. We would love for you to be with us, watching our family grow and watching all of the things that we want to share with you guys. Um, we're super thankful to have every single one of you that watch this. Share this with anybody that's having a baby, and don't let it scare you, because not every situation is this way. But if I can help 1 in every 1,000 people that may be a NICU parent, share this video because we want to help you. So
Cool.
thank you for watching,
Yep.
and again, subscribe. We'll drop that link below for the Upper Baby car seat and stroller.